We're going to work with Jenkins here. Now, the first thing you need to do is make sure that Jenkins is started. So head over to your administrative tools and look for services. Double click on services and then search for Jenkins in the list. You should find Jenkins right there between the I and the K. And you've got the option to stop it or start it or resume it or whatever. What you want to do is make sure it's started. If it's already started, you're good. You can always click restart to do a little bounce of the server. But make sure Jenkins is started. You might also want to make sure that no jar files have been started. If you've got a Spring Boot application that might be running on port 8080, make sure that Spring Boot application is closed as well. That might mean stopping Spring Source Tool Suite if it's running. But if all of that is taken care of, Jenkins is starting and nothing is running on port 8080, localhost 8080 should bring you to the Jenkins landing page, where you have to sign in. wasadmin is the username and password. Click sign in. And this will take you to the Jenkins landing page. Now, it may take a little while to get used to the Jenkins landing page. It's worth noting, if you ever get lost, you can always just click on the Jenkins head over there and it takes you to the basic dashboard. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually build this RPS Maven project. It's over on GitHub. Cameron MCNZ, RPS Maven. If you ever want to clone, compile, work with a repository, the thing you need is the GitHub URL. So I'm going to copy that GitHub URL. I'm also going to make note of the fact that I'm in the main branch. I believe that Jenkins will default to the master branch. The master branch is not what I want. I want the main branch. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Now with that URL copied, I'm going to create a new Jenkins build job. I'm going to call it rock, paper, scissors, because it's kind of a rock, paper, scissors project. Just make it a freestyle project. Click OK, and this will bring me to the basic user interface for creating a Jenkins job. And you can see there's a bunch of options at the beginning: parameterize it, throttle the build. I'm more interested in the source code management, so I've got a Git repository. It's a GitHub repository, but it's fundamentally Git, so I will paste the URL in there. It ends up saying, hey, it can't find this Git repository. It's only because I haven't moved out of this particular text field. If you click Tab, just kind of move out of there, it'll say, hey, that's not a problem. It just takes a while for it to think about it. Now notice down here, it's on the master branch. I actually want the main branch, so I'm going to select main, type that in. Notice you can add a branch, so you can actually build all of the branches at the same time if you really wanted to. But right now I'm only interested in master. Coming down, you can set build triggers, you can build it periodically, you can pull source code management tool every once in a while just to see if there's anything new. These are all build trigger options. I'm interested in adding a build step. I want to build this with Maven. Notice there's the ability to invoke a Gradle script, a Gradle task. There's also the ability to invoke a top-level Maven target. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call clean, compile, and package. I could just do Maven install, but I like the way that sounds. Notice I don't have to say MVN at the beginning. That actually would cause a problem. And that's it. I'm going to click apply. I'll click save, and I'll click the build now button. And that will cause this Jenkins job to build. Now you can click on this link as it's running. And as it's running, you can take a look at the console output. Notice it does a bunch of Git operations. It does a Git init, it does a Git fetch, it pulls all of the code from Ginit. Where's the Git init up there? Oh, it's in there somewhere. But basically it initializes a new Git repository and pulls all of the code in. You'll also notice that when it does the build, so here it is running all of the Maven targets, notice it says it even builds a jar and it gives this really crazy folder here. I'm actually going to copy that folder, open up Windows Explorer, and just take a look at this folder. This is called the Jenkins home. You can configure this to go to a slightly more palatable location, but you'll notice that users wasadmin app data local jenkins.jenkins. I believe that's the Jenkins home. Then you've got a workspace folder. This is where all the different builds go. There's my rock, paper, scissors build, and yeah, you can see it right there. There's all of the code from the build. I can click on target, and you notice there's the Spock lizard jar file right there, which is actually a Spring Boot runnable jar file. So yeah, that's how a Jenkins build job works. It looks like it ran well. I'm going to head back to the dashboard over here, and you can actually see the green sphere indicates success. It's not green, it's blue. A blue sphere indicates success. And so that's how you run a Jenkins build job. Now, I've added a little Easter egg over here in the main branch of RPS Maven. If you scroll down to the bottom here, you'll actually see a little website status check. So I'm going to click on this link. You can go in, take a look at this code. It does a couple of directory listings. This is designed to run in a bash shell. So it does a directory listing ls, changes into the target folder, assuming that a build has just completed, and then it tries to run the jar file. Notice it runs it on port 8080. It also prints the process ID to a file named PID. Then it does a web page status code check and prints out that check. And then after that, it actually does an invocation of the increase wins method, which returns JSON. So it holds JSON in a variable. And then it makes sure that that variable has the word wins in it, because that JSON string is supposed to list the number of wins, losses, and ties. So this actually validates the page, says, hey, the JSON string is valid, or it says, hey, that JSON string doesn't seem to be working properly. Notice that in the end, it actually kills the process that ran Java. That's why we had to grab the process ID earlier, and that way the Java process is killed when the test is complete, and we don't have port 8088 hanging around. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and add this as another build step. So I'm going to click raw. That just allows me to copy the code without any decoration messing up the copy and paste. And I'm going to come back to Jenkins. I'm going to click on the rock, papers, scissors job. I'm going to go over to configure. And then I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. I'm going to click on Add Build Step, and I'm going to choose Execute Shell. And here I'm just going to paste that code. And that's just the code that is going to start the jar file and test it. So I'll click Apply. Then I will click Save. I'll click Build Now. And then as this build runs, I'm going to click on the build job itself. Click on console output so we can see what's happening as this build job runs. It looks like the tests were passed. It looks like it's now doing all of those commands, mostly ls commands, printing out the directory. And it looks like it actually started my Spring Boot application on port 8088. Then as this runs, it does a curl, which grabs the increase wins. It does that curl again and holds it as a variable. That's the JSON string that gets returned. As you can see, it does contain the word wins. And so we do a little check, and then you see a little output that says, hey, the JSON string is valid. Then we actually kill the process that started the Java process, the Spring Boot app. And so now, not only have I done a build, but I've actually done, what could you say, maybe continuous delivery, continuous deployment. I am now making sure that not only does this build, but I'm actually delivering an application that works. Maybe I'm not deploying it, but I am proving that, yeah, this application runs, it compiles, and it actually works. So if you want to use it, it's right there for you to use it. And there you go. That's how Jenkins helps to support continuous integration and continuous delivery.